Could there be an allusion to this in an ancient biblical prophecy? We are in the footsteps of the Messiah, and the Messiah's coming is imminent. They have to rebuild the temple. All of this is going to lead to the rise of the Antichrist, the false Messiah, and the return of the Lord.
Rabbi Jason Sobel, I really want to get your thoughts about what just happened with Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu making this announcement that really shocked the whole world about Gaza and the United States taking ownership of Gaza. What is your thoughts about this? I know the last time that you and I talked about Gaza, it was about the Nephilim spirits in Gaza. So I'm a little bit leery about this already, but tell us your thoughts about this whole announcement.
Well, it's certainly a shocker. Look, I think Gaza plays a significant place in prophecy. I think there's actually, even in the statement, a prophetic connection to this Hebrew year on the calendar. This year, 5785, is the year of the Hey on the Hebrew calendar. Hey is the fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, has the numerical value of 5. And one of the interesting things is that the word Hey represents behold, or it can mean surprise. It's kind of like when you jump out someone, you go, hey, right? And you shock them, right? And they jump back, right? So Hey symbolizes surprise. It symbolizes something shocking. And what's interesting is that in the beginning of the Hebrew year, we do a big Rosh Hashanah service. We talk about the prophetic meaning of the year. This was back in the fall. And we talked about how the year of the Hey that we're in symbolizes God bringing about his plans in shocking and unexpected ways. Mm-hmm. And this certainly is that.
Yes, definitely.
I don't even look, when I watched that interview, it didn't even seem like Netanyahu, Prime Minister, knew that was coming. Right. Like he might have known a little bit about it, but I think it took him by surprise that it was said. And, the idea of relocating 2 million Gazans, 2 million Palestinians to other areas. I mean, I don't know how that would work. I don't see how anyone's going to go for it. But if anyone can get it done, President Trump could get it done. But what's interesting is that could there be an allusion to this in an ancient biblical prophecy found in the book of Zephaniah? Zephaniah, the prophet, is one of the minor prophets, in Hebrew known as the Treasher, one of the 13 minor prophets. Okay, and he was actually a disciple of Habakkuk and a mentor to the prophet Jeremiah. But what's interesting is that this is what he says in Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 4, for Gaza will be abandoned. Ashkelon will be a wasteland. And then he goes on to say, the land of the Lord is against you, Canaan, land of the Philistines. He says, I will destroy you and none will be left. The land by the sea will become pastures, having wells for shepherds and pens for flocks. The land will belong to the remnant of the people of Judah, where they will find pasture. I mean, that's crazy.
I'm getting chills as you were reading that. I've read that verse before. I've never thought about it this way, but in light of current events, there might be a possible fulfillment of that with this.
I mean, Gaza abandoned. That's basically what Trump is saying, that the Palestinians need to abandon Gaza. It's not safe. It's always been a problem. People are always going to die because of the radical extremists that are there. And it's going to be abandoned. And it's going to become a remnant. It's going to be given back to Judah and the Jewish people. I mean, look, I can't tell you with 100% certainty that this prophecy is being fulfilled in this way, but it's certainly something that we need to keep our eyes on, and say, look, could this be that? I mean, it sounds like it could be. And what's also interesting with that is that, again, connected to this year prophetically on the Hebrew calendar, it's the year of the 5785, which is the Hey, as we said. which is, again, it's important to know Hebrew letters and numbers. We've actually just released a new book on Hebrew letters and numbers. But the point being is that 85 is the numerical value of the Hebrew word for security.
Oh, wow.
And one of the interesting prophecies concerning the war of Gog and Magog is that the war of Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38, 39, only comes while Israel is living securely in the land in cities with no walls. I would say that has never existed in the modern, ever in history or in the modern state of Israel, even in the modern state of Israel. And so could it be that everything that's happened with the Iranians and with Syria, with Lebanon, and all the changes that have happened there, and Trump's sanctions on Iran, who is the main funder of terrorism, his restoring the sanctions, which is meant to weaken or cripple, and at least, the very least, take away their money so they can't fund terrorism. What's happening in Gaza? Could it be that all of this is to create that security and peace, Abraham Accords, that, taking it to the next level, that ultimately is the prophetic pretext, the prophetic harbinger to what has to happen before Ezekiel is fulfilled of the war of Gog and Magog. So maybe this is the precursor that leads to that. He actually, makes peace. He actually does something with the Palestinians. And then over time, people get upset and they're like, no, we don't like this. We're not going for this. And then everything, it bounces back and goes the opposite direction. But there's another interesting thing prophetically as well, because you have to understand that going back to the first century, well, not for this, let me say that again, going back to ancient times, at least to the days of Nehemiah, Jewish people have read the Torah from Genesis to Deuteronomy on a cyclical basis. And there is this idea in Jewish thought that everything that happens in a particular week in history, all the major events that happened, in some way can find their connection to the weekly Torah portion. And so you remember, Yeshua, Jesus, went into the synagogue on the Shabbat and he read from the scroll. He was reading from the Torah portion and a portion from the prophets. Okay. And so what is there? Is there a potential allusion, a hinting at, a connection point between this week's reading of the Torah portion and what we're seeing going on with the Trump announcement? Possibly. What's interesting is that this week's Torah portion is called Bishalach, which means you shall go forth, you shall leave. Well, that's basically what Trump is saying to the Palestinians, that they need to go forth and they're going to be given someplace else to live. But what's interesting is Exodus chapter 13, where you read this. So it happened that after Pharaoh released the people of God didn't lead the people by the road through the land of the Philistines, which was the shortest route. For God thought, if the people encounter war, they'll change their minds and go back to Egypt. So God led the people on the wilderness road, looping around to the Red Sea. So what's interesting is that he doesn't want to lead them through the land of the Philistines. Well, Philistines is the name of the Palestinians. The reason why the Palestinians took that name is because they were associating themselves with the Philistines and trying to make an ancient connection back to the land, which in truth they don't really have, but they're trying to take that name to kind of claim that they had a connection. So this week's Torah portion is talking about the Philistines. The Palestinians call themselves the Philistines. Pelishtim in Hebrew, which is the Hebrew word for Philistine, gets translated into Palestine, but in Hebrew, it's actually the Philistines. Okay. And what's interesting about that is that God took them on, God circumvented their route. He didn't take them on the straight path. He took them on a completely different path, a completely different way than what they would have expected in order so that they wouldn't go into fear and get a place of war. Well, it seems to me that this is exactly what Trump has done. He has said, we're going a different route. Like God took Israel on a different route, a route that no one would take. It was a circuitous route. It was a route that no one was expected, but he knew taking the main route, taking the route that people normally would take, would only lead to problems, would only lead to difficulties for the Jewish people, for his people. And it seems like Trump is doing something similar to what we see in this Torah portion. He's saying, look, if there's going to be peace, if Israel is going to be settled in their land, then we have to take a different approach, not the approach that has been taken for the last number of decades, which hasn't worked. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. But he took them on a completely unexpected, different route, circumvented what would have been the normal way of doing things. And I think that's what President Trump is doing. He's circumventing, he's going an unexpected route, a different route. It might be a longer route, but, could it be a better route? And could this be part of God's prophetic plan for this time and season? I don't know, but I think it's all kind of interesting, and we need to keep our eyes on it because we're living in prophetic times.
I knew if I asked you that question, I would have a very, very deep answer. And it wasn't just going to be, I like it or I don't. Like, you have a prophetic understanding, the Torah portion for this week, all this stuff that is all tying together. That is just fascinating. Thank you for sharing all that. Two more things here real quick.
Yeah.
Trump has people in his cabinet now, people that are ambassadors. I just want to ask you about these two. You have the ambassador to Israel now is former governor Mike Huckabee. And just want to know your thoughts about that. But also Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, is a very big supporter of Israel and actually was there in 2018 and is actually saying that that he believes that there is no reason why the miracle of the reestablishment of the temple on the Temple Mount is not possible. And so the Times of Israel just put out an article about this recently, shortly after the election. Just what are your thoughts about some of these people that Trump has around him, and especially about Pete Hegseth's comments there?
Yeah, I mean, I've had the privilege of spending time with Ambassador Huckabee. I've been on his show several times, and he's such a man of faith and a lover of the Lord, and obviously a lover of Israel and the Jewish people. I don't think he could have picked a better person to be the ambassador. He has political experience, but he also has obviously the historical and spiritual understanding of the conflict. So from a biblical perspective, from a faith perspective, I think he's an amazing person, and I think he is going to do an amazing job. And again, I don't think he could have a better pick. I was so excited, and I'm looking forward to going to visit him when we go to Israel and go into the embassy, and it's going to be amazing. So I'm excited about that. And I think with Pete, I've met him when I was on Fox and Friends in the studio, and great guy, nice guy. I mean, I don't really know him. I haven't spent a lot of time, but I've met him. Great guy, seemed like an amazing guy even when I met him. And I think that his comments are significant because, again, one of the things that we did mention before is the numerical value of Donald Trump is connected to the numerical value of Messiah, son of David. So I think Trump is the one who prepares the way. And again, people talk about him as a Cyrus. Cyrus gave the decree for the children of Israel to go back to the land and to begin to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. And so I think we could be seeing that. And we know for sure, from a biblical and from a prophetic and even a Jewish understanding, that the temple has to be built in connection with the return of the Messiah. And from a traditional rabbinic perspective, what's interesting is that every time the rabbis historically have had fervent messianic expectation, things always went bad. There was always someone who came forward to claim to be the Messiah. People followed him, and it led to devastation, like the first Jewish revolt, which ended in the destruction of the temple, the second Jewish revolt. So basically, from the first century, second century, the religious Jewish establishment always tried to damper down the messianic expectation. Yes, we believe in the Messiah, but don't calculate his days. Don't have these messianic. Don't say Messiah is coming today. So there's really been this playing down of expectations of the coming of the Messiah, because it always led to disasters historically. A false Messiah always arose. For the first time since then, the majority of the well-known, not fringe, well-known religious Jewish leaders have said we are in the footsteps of the Messiah, and the Messiah's coming is imminent, at any moment. This is historically has not been the case. So there is a complete shifting and a focus on the events of the latter days, what we would call the end times, among rabbis, mainstream, well-known Orthodox rabbis, establishment of a Sanhedrin, everything needed to train the priests for the sacrifice, practicing sacrifice, all of going up to the Temple Mount, all of these things, which we could go into detail on if we had the time. But here's
maybe another time.
Yeah. But here's the point. The point is that from a Jewish perspective, one of the signs that someone is the Messiah, tangible signs that they have to do, is they have to rebuild the temple. And so the fact that there is now talk about rebuilding of the temple tells us all of this is going to lead to the rise of the Antichrist, the false Messiah, and the return of the Lord. So very significant, very significant.
Very significant. So there's a lot of things that we need to be praying for, keeping our eyes open about, and being alert for what is to come. Rabbi Jason, thank you so much for giving the insight about this incredible announcement. And you gave so much more insight than I was even expecting. That was amazing. And thank you so much for the other bits there as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Always great to be with you. Shalom and blessing.